Welcome, everyone. I'm Dave Rosendahl from Mindfire, and I am going to be the moderator today for what I think is probably the most important webinar thus far in 2025. And the reason why I say that is because USPS is offering this 30% credit through the Mail Growth Incentive Program. And based on the registration data, as I said a moment ago, over 700 of you have registered for today. You got a lot of questions. There's still a lot of open questions in your mind. And my job as the moderator today is to make sure that you get unblocked and that you get what you need. If you're the mail owner and you're running these direct mail campaigns, or if you're the mail service provider, that you get what you need in order to move forward. Also, the other reason this is important is you likely heard the news earlier this week about the Postmaster General and then the Washington Post article last night. So this is an incredible opportunity to hear directly from USPS leadership and your peers in terms of what this means and the go-forward plan. So there's a lot that we've got teed up for you today, but I got a question for all of you before we jump in. For how many of you is today your first time joining us? I want you to drop let's put a 1 in the chat if this is your first time joining us. I want to see those ones coming in. How many of you are first timers here? Oh, awesome. There's a lot of first timers here. That's fantastic, folks. For those of you who are here for the first time, wow, the numbers are pouring in here. This is actually the 5th in a series of events that, thanks to Solvamo, we're bringing you, and with the intent and with the intention that we help the community understand direct mail and how to better leverage it for the marketing that we're all doing. We've got industry supporters, whether that be USPS, Johnson & Quinn, United Business Mail, What They Think, BCC Software. There's a community that's gathered to spread the word and to continue to keep things front and center for us. Clearly, based on the registration numbers, this series is addressing some really important topics for you all. Now, if you stay to the end, we're going to give you access to this resource guide that you're seeing here on the screen, going to help you walk through the postage promotions as well as maximize the incentive programs that we're talking about today. So make sure to stick to the end, and we're going to get that into your hands. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our 3 distinguished guests today, starting with Chris Karpenko. He is the Senior Director of Product Management at the United States Postal Service. And Chris leads strategic initiatives there designed to transform how all of us leverage mail, including overseeing the Mail Growth Incentive Program, the one that we're talking about today. Now, Chris brings with him to USPS an extensive marketing background, which I think is super important to this conversation because as mailers and mail service providers, he understands the imperative to make direct mail measurable and ROI positive. So Chris, I'm sure this has been an incredibly busy week for you, given all the recent news. So thank you for spending time with us today. We really appreciate you being here with us.
Well, thank you, Dave. Excited to be here today. So there's a lot of good things to talk about.
Awesome. Also, another Chris that we have with us today, Mr. Chris Lean, who is the Vice President of Industry Affairs at BCC Software, Postal Affairs there, and Chairman of the National Postal Forum. How many of you are going to the National Postal Forum? Let me know there in the chat. As the VP of Postal Affairs and a longtime industry advocate, I expect many of you know Chris as well. He is our voice to the industry with USPS leadership. And he has helped countless organizations navigate postal regulations and maximize the promotions and the incentives that we're talking about today. So Chris, as our voice and representative with USPS leadership, we're delighted to have you back for another session. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Dave. I am doing great. Like I said, I'm walking on sunshine, man. What a great topic. I'm really looking forward to talking about this. And specifically, and I'm looking at you, mail service providers, I'm anxious to talk to you because you know what? You've got an important role to play in this. We'll get to that in a moment, but this is an opportunity for all of us. So thank you for letting me be part of this, Dave.
You got it. And lastly, the only expert not named Chris today, I guess, is Jerry from Solvamo. Jerry's got over 37 years of industry experience spanning distribution, manufacturing, and sales. And as you know, Solvamo is the sponsor for today's event. So without Jerry and his team at Solvamo realizing that there is this significant unmet appetite for this kind of information, we wouldn't be here. So make sure to give Solvamo thanks there in the chat. And in case you don't know, they power 1 out of 3 direct mail pieces in the US. So chances are you've touched or used one of Solvamo's products in one way or in another. And Jerry, thank you for coordinating today's event and making all of this possible. Good morning.
Yeah, you got it, Chris. Happy to be here. As you said, the 5th of these webinars, which is a lot of fun to do. And thank you to Chris and Chris for giving of their time today to help the industry move forward. Exciting times, to say the least.
Definitely exciting times. And as I mentioned a moment ago, folks, there are others here in the chat. We've got a team of USPS experts and BCC folks who can answer your questions. This is for you. So I want to make sure that you know how to ask those questions. If you look at Zoom, you have 2 ways to converse with us. One is through the chat, which I see many of you doing already. But if you have a question, I want you to open up that Q&A box, because once you do that, you're going to have the opportunity to see the questions that your peers have asked. and you can upvote the ones that are most important to you. Or if you don't see your question there, you can add one and then others can upvote your question, okay? So please be selfish, ask whatever's on your mind. Nothing is out of bounds here. I want to make sure you get your question answered. So that's how you're going to interact with us today, and we're going to make sure that we get to as many of those questions as possible. Now, I got a question for all of you. Suzanne, get the poll ready here in just a minute. I want to know who's here in the room. By that, I mean, I know that we have folks from USPS, we've got mail owners, we've got mail service providers, and we have agencies. Between this session and the last two, as I mentioned, we've had over 2,500 of you gather. And so with a variety of backgrounds and organizations that you represent, it's useful for us to know who's here so that we can tailor the conversation specifically to you. So Suzanne, go ahead and launch that poll. There you go. If you look at the screen, folks, what type of organization are you? Which of those best meets the description of who you are? I'm going to leave that up for about 30 seconds here. This is important, again, like I said, because we want to know who's here in the room. It's going to help Chris Karpenko, Chris Lean, Jerry, myself, tailor the conversation specifically to those of you who are here in the room. So you got another 10 seconds or so. I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to answer. And if you're not one of these categories here, let us know in the chat if you don't fit into one of those nice and neat, okay? Love the Jeopardy music, Ken says. All right. Okay, Suzanne, let's go ahead and bring that up. Let's take a look at what we've got here. Let's share the results with everyone. All right, my old eyes have trouble seeing the little type there, but let me bring that down here. So it looks like the majority, as expected, are mail service provider. Interesting. So Chris Lean, as you said, you were talking to them earlier. Then we've got mail owner, we've got USPS, we've got agencies, and then we've got something else. So if you're something else, please tell us there in the chat. We want to know who you are. Now, one more question before I bring Chris Karpenko up. Suzanne, let's go ahead and get this one fired up. We want to know, did you participate in the mail growth incentive last year? So Suzanne, go ahead and bring that up there on the screen. We want to know if you participated, and if you did, maybe you don't know, that's okay, or if you didn't. And then secondly, are you planning to participate this year? So again, I'm going to leave this one up for about 30 seconds. Ken, I think it was Ken who said he likes the Jeopardy music. There we go. You got about 20 more seconds here to vote, folks. Did you participate last year? And then we also want to know if you are anticipating doing so this year. So please take a moment. Let's get everyone to vote. Thank you. If I could get my co-host, there we go. Thank you, Cheryl. I saw you there in the car for a second. All right, Suzanne, let's bring that one to a close. I am very interested to see what we have here, and I would expect Chris Karpenko is as well. So, wow, we have 35% of you that said yes, you participated. 56% said no, and then 9% of you said not sure. Will you participate this year? Over half said yes, 10% said no, and 38% said they're not sure. Hey, for the 10% who said no, do me a favor. Go in the chat and let us know why not. I want to understand why so that we can help you, if possible, take advantage of this 30%. All right, so without further ado, Chris Karpenko, you ready, my man?
Ready? Yeah, let's roll.
let's jump right into this. But before we do, I'm going to be selfish myself here, Chris. I want to know for a moment, what brought you to USPS? Kind of what was the journey that took you into USPS? Because I know we've had a couple of opportunities to engage one-on-one. I get the sense that you're a very creative guy with an interesting background and a unique perspective on the industry. So how did you arrive at USPS?
So my first engagement with the Postal Service was as a teenager, believe it or not. I worked part-time as a driver, driving down into the city and picking up mail and at businesses, and that was my I was trying to pay for school when I started that, and I left off, and at some point I came back to the Postal Service and I started doing some projects for them and ended up with a project. My background ended up being in finance, but I had a team here at headquarters when I moved over in 2013 to work with the new CCMO at the time, and they said, we need you to do some projects for us, and I kind of put my hands into it, started running the marketing group for them, did some really cool and amazing things, got to work with some of the fantastic people on the marketing end and repositioning. Peaked the Postal Service out at about 2020, so about 5 to 7 years, as the #1 trusted entity, whether it was a government entity or private sector. So we were getting a triple play there for #1 trusted. An opportunity occurred for me here to move into the the product side, and I thought it was just a fantastic experience for me to jump in. Going from this creative positioning perspective, having the data, and the finance background and operations, and coming in to work into the product world and really taking on what's worth billions, tens of billions of dollars for this organization, and what ultimately ends up being trillions in economic value across the country with all sorts of folks, industry, brands, as well as those other providers like the drop shippers that I think we're in here in the other category. But really this opportunity to make big things happen, and hence where we're at with this mail growth incentive, which is what I would consider one of the more historical things that the Postal Service has done tied to commerce and growth.
Absolutely. Wow, fascinating story. I'd love to hear more about that at some point because there's quite a background there that you bring to the conversation. But let's get right into the questions that have been submitted. And the first one I'm going to pose to you is kind of a lot of the folks here are asking, for a basic overview of the mail growth incentive. For example, Lillian Ransom asked, what is the marketing mail growth incentive? What does it offer? What's it incentivizing? Can you explain more about it, and why is USPS offering that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Why, right? Everyone wants to know why. We did it because we wanted to incentivize marketers, incentivize the marketplace, incentivize businesses to be able to see mail as a viable channel, a viable communications channel and mechanism to reach their customers and to engage with their customers, whether that was using first-class mail or marketing mail. The ability to say, hey, if we can give you some type of credit or rebate, would you use more and reinvest into growing that part of your effort to grow your business and in essence start to grow our businesses as well as the industry that's around us. So we were in essence decreasing that cost of mail for someone to enter into the market or take out some of the friction points. It allowed a number of customers to potentially go into new markets in an acquisition play. Maybe they were just holding their line with the current budgets that they had, but did this allow for folks to reinvest into an acquisition or into a constant contact, additional touch points? It also shows that we're here. I'll sidestep a little bit just to let you know that, for everybody's edification here, we are in June, we'll be 250 years old.
Wow.
We're not going anywhere. We are older than the country itself. We were there for a purpose, and that was to unify and connect, provide universal service, create commerce, protect our democracy, do all sorts of good things. But it was to bind a nation. So this is a platform. This is an infrastructure that has been around for about 250 years and is going to be around the next 250 years.
Absolutely. Well, I'm the kind of guy that likes to get into the data and the numbers, and with your finance background, I'm sure you've got information to share with us here. I'd love to know, how did it work out last year? How many companies participated? What kind of volume gains did you see? What was the total incentive impact? What can you share with us there?
Yeah, so super good. So for us, we figured, let's just start out with an opportunity of a certain threshold. We baselined on a number of things. Ultimately, with those that heard about it, and it was new, right? It was new for folks.
Yep.
We had about 1,300 entities or brands participate for us. They earned, which is really astounding, and I think everybody should take note of this. When I've talked to some global CMOs last week while I was in New York on some other things, this idea around $500 million, over $500 million of credit went back into the marketplace. So it went back into businesses where they could reinvest and do more mail, which ultimately gave more business to the industry and gave more pieces and revenue for the Postal Service. Completely amazing for us, right? We had over 5.5 billion pieces, new pieces generated for us. And when you think about, you think about the marketplace, and everybody talks about, all the crazy that's going on in the world. This is a really fantastic story. It's a story about growth, right?
Yep.
Our intent was to put this into play and test that market to see, would businesses look at reinvesting and look at growth so that we could all have this, all floating, all boats rise, right? So in that event of, is it going to work? So these types of things were really, really phenomenal, especially in the marketing mail and the first class mail environment. And you can see on the right here off the screen, those that participated, we had an upside. And those that didn't participate, were relatively flat or a little bit less than what they may have done in years past. So we see this as a really good first year and an opportunity to then, really amp that up for this coming year, especially for those, that have already taken advantage of it, but those that haven't taken advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I see some of the questions here in the chat around getting this data and getting the slides. Does anybody want the visuals and the deck here? If you do, let us know there in the chat, and I will make sure that the team follows up with you after the event there in the resource guide to get all of this to you. Who wants this? Yes? Okay, I see a lot of the yeses coming in. I see Abigail saying yes. Fantastic. Well, let's take one level deeper then here, Chris. Go into the folks who took advantage of this, the $500 million in incentives here. And, tell us a little bit about some of the verticals and the use cases that we saw there in terms of who used it and what kind of outcomes they got from it.
So we've taken some initial swipes at the data to identify types of customers and who. We've got a couple here that really kind of stand out for us. We had a grocery store chain. They had been out of the mail for a while. They had pulled themselves out. With this incentive, they went back and got back into it, significantly increasing their volume and their interactivity. We saw a huge upside for us, but also for them. And I think I'm gonna keep stressing the fact that this isn't, all parties win on this. Everybody's doing great. We had a lot of financial institutions start to look at this and explore new strategies. The idea around acquisition, continuous contact, being able to re-engage with their customers, acquiring new business was a really nice play for the financial institutions. And then what's kind of interesting, and we may not always even think about this, but when you think about the world of, we had an industrial equipment company. Okay. And historically, we may not think of that. We have our own internal biases of what does or doesn't work. Right. We had this mid-sized customer come out, and they started to utilize the mail growth incentive. And we saw this fairly large amount of credits that they had earned over this because they were able to take advantage of this mail growth incentive. So those are three very different verticals, very different customers in their own way. Some had been experiencing mail, some had gotten away from it, but three very different variations that I throw out here today just because it's not vertical specific. And we can talk about some of those verticals in the next slide or two. But this for me is really enlightening because we should be taking away our inherent biases on what we think works. Mm-hmm. And start to look at verticals that did participate and why they participated in these things.
So we got a ton of questions then about 2025, what kind of mail qualifies, this question of like, how is the baseline determined? When do people need to register? What's the performance period? So let's talk now about 2025 and kind of lay out what does that look like and kind of what are the important dates and figures that people need to know about getting started?
Yeah, so for us, the baseline period is, and it's a little bit different for everyone. So I'll just call some of these nuances out because we deal with fiscal year versus calendar year, right? Our baseline period for qualification to if you have mailed before, we use a baseline to kind of create a threshold for you. But this idea around the baseline would be October of 2023 through September of 2024, right? The registration period has been open since November, and it will close the end of May. So by June, we lock everybody in for 2025. Okay. And then the nuance here is our performance period is what will you do from January 1st of 2025 through December of 2025. So we had a little bit of an anomaly here with the baseline period of being a fiscal year that we started with. We're switching that over for 2026, but for 2025, it will be fiscal year for us for baseline, but then the incentive period, calendar year. And that aligns with what we heard through this first year sort of trial, if you will, where people were baselining their budgets and trying to baseline their calendar year budgets accordingly. So it's really just some nuances in that. And then what we end up doing is we give a 30%. And again, I'm going to revalidate the fact that it's a 30% postage credit, which is unheard of. We've never done this before. These are the types of things that we're looking at to really try to give people this incentivization to say, hey, try it. You'll see it works. This makes a difference. And then what happens is, and people in excess of 1 million pieces of their baseline, whichever's higher, they end up earning these postage credits, and they'll be issued. You can have a chance to get them not just at the end of the year, but you do have the opportunity to get them quarterly, which has really been helpful for some of our customers that have participated because they're actually using them in the current year to take advantage of a growth opportunity during that current year versus banking them all up and then saving them for the following year.
Wow, folks. So let us know if you have questions. I know there's a lot here. I see a lot of questions coming in. Don't hold back. If anything requires clarification, please open up the Q&A, add your question there. If you've got a question, it's likely others do as well, and we'll get some upvotes on that so I can get to your top questions here in real time. So talk to us about the eligibility criteria here, Chris.
The nice part about this, anybody can register. Okay. So if you've got a company and organization that you think wants to get into it, anybody can register. You have never mailed before, you can register. Okay. And if you've never mailed before, there are plenty of industry partners out there that are out there to help. And if you're an industry partner of ours that are out there, if you're a mail service provider, right, now's the opportunity to reframe your engagement with your customers and your departments of those brands in what the opportunity is and what the upside is and all that. There's no minimum requirement in any of this. We do start to give the credit off at 1 million pieces. So your 1,000,001 piece, you start to get it. So in theory, if you did a million piece threshold and you went to 2 million, if you were to spray it across the whole thing, you get 15% total across all of it, but you get 30% over 30% credit for each piece over that million or above your initial threshold that we agree with when you apply for that. The MSPs, this is a great question because we have so many folks from the industry that are on here. Can they participate? Yes, right? But then they themselves, must be the mail owner. So it's a little bit of a nuanced trait in that. So you got to kind of own what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the market to grow, not the market to compete with each other. Right? We don't want, a bad example is, I don't want 5 printers all fighting for the same job and trying to, kill their margins with everything. What I'm trying to do is create a bigger market so that we actually create a pool so that those 5 printers are actually going after customers and growth. So they're going after them. So
right. Yeah, I know there's a lot of questions around that, Chris. So folks, don't hesitate. Ask us the questions you have around. I saw a lot of, hey, can the MSP participate? So please make sure that you're clear on that for the mail service providers, the printers, the agencies here. If you have a question, let us know. Add it to the Q&A. So Chris, go on. I know there were questions around what if my business has multiple business units? What kind of mail is eligible? So just touch on each of those for us.
Yeah, so there's some nuances there too, right? So we're trying to be as broad as possible, but as supportive. And keep it in some level of parameters here. So if you have a business and it's a pretty large business and it needs, it has different business units, there are opportunities to separate those out. And that's a discussion for the mail team. So I think 3 of them are on today. You got Steve Mills, who's running that group over there with Stacia and Ravi. So they're also answering specific questions. If you've got questions about that and you think you've got a business unit that's big enough to take advantage of it while other business units are doing something different, that, let's have that conversation. They can be considered, quote unquote, if in our current definition, a different owner. We'd obviously have to, provide some data to that. To date, we have given out $380 million of credit so far. So it's over $500 million qualified, but I want to point out there's $380 million of credit we've done, and we've been going through this audit because when you're talking about $500 million, it's important to get the numbers right. So we're going through that now, but already before the February 28th the cutoff period, we've already given out $380 million.
So to be clear, over $500 million in credits accrued, if you will, and over $300 million already distributed. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
That is correct.
All right, so let's go to the next step here, folks. I want to go one step deeper now and talk about the mechanics of participation. There were a lot of questions from the industry here around how to actually do this, and we're going to touch on that now, but I also want to let you know towards the end, we're going to give you an opportunity to participate in a hands-on workshop. We did this with the Postage promotions as well, where we're going to have the USPS team walk us through the BCG and the other things that you need to know in order to get your hands dirty and engaged here. But for the purposes of the conversation today, Chris, talk us through the 5 key steps of participating. How do folks participate?
Yeah, it's a 5-step process for us. We've tried to simplify it. We've gone through a number of learnings this year in getting it up and running, both on our end and on the industry and on the customer end. But you start with registering, right? The first part is you go off and register for the mailing promotions portal that's out there. You want to go through that. It's still open. There's plenty of time to do it. You'll enter in some alternate contact information. And I'm saying this because it's important. People change roles, they move on. Organizations can get large or big. We'll want additional contact information just in case someone is out on vacation or they've changed roles and moved within the organization. So you'll enter that. You'll then, once you have all that information to us, you as the owner will submit this authorization. And I say this, you're going to submit authorization that you as a representative of the company have that authorization to enroll your organization with this program, and that you also own those CRIDs, right? Those customer IDs, and that you're agreeing to the terms and conditions. Something important to note with that, anybody can sign up, but you also want to make sure that you've got that, what I would consider authority or delegation to be able to claim those things. Many of you already do, which is awesome. And then what ends up happening is this they call it, this SR, service request, is created, and then you start to engage with us. We'll email you, and we now have some dialogue going back and forth. And then what happens is we will go through this process then with the company on agreeing to the baseline. If the baseline's 0, if the baseline's $1 million or $1.5 million, whatever that might be, or 750, we will agree to that baseline. And then once we agree to that, that's what we will work with for 2025. And once you get over that baseline, you're starting to get that credit. So we've had a pretty good experience with that. I think most customers have worked through and with that idea around the baseline. It's not hard to do. If you're a big company and you got a lot of crids, it might be a little bit of work on your part, but I'm gonna encourage you. It's worth the work. Right? If I can hand out $500 million, I feel like I won the lotto, and I'm giving out, I'm giving out money, I'm giving out credit to folks, and everybody should be happy. So it's a great opportunity. So this, once it's agreed upon, we start the process, and it runs. So you don't have to have it done in a week. That's why we put those timelines in place, so that we can give you some time to gather the information and feel comfortable and good about what you can do. So, and then you have also time to talk to your folks within your organizations to talk it up. Hey, did you know we have this as an opportunity?
Yeah, I see Ann saying our credits were made available last week. It does take time for them to go through all the applications. So yeah, folks, be patient. This is a new thing, and as you can see, over $500 million in credits for the USPS to process. So have a little patience. If you have questions about any of these 5 steps, please make sure to use the Q&A tab here in Zoom so that we can get those questions answered for you. So tell us here, how does the USPS measure performance for this growth incentive? I want to make sure that everyone is clear, because there were a lot of questions around the mechanics of how that works.
Yeah, and it's a super good question to it, because understanding why and how will be helpful for folks, especially with some of the questions that I see coming in here. So they're based on registered crids. So
Okay.
if you didn't register a crid, it doesn't count. It's like it never happened. So did the tree fall in the forest? Did anyone hear it? I don't know. No one was there. So if we don't have the crid, we don't know. We can't give anybody credit for it. So that's probably a big one. And we're finding just again, Dave, you mentioned about have a little patience with it.
Yeah.
The team's been working on making sure we're giving out the right credits to the right folks for the right amount. We have seen some things where, whether it's the customer, whether it's the MSP, whether it's the Postal Service, we've seen some anomalies come through, some quality control issues that have come up, but we've been able to identify what those are. If anybody hasn't submitted credits today, I think it's a 48-hour window. So if you haven't submitted and you submit it today, it's a 48-hour window. We had some credits initially in January that we ended up having to go back and just re-look at that, because we wanted to make sure that was accurate. And in many cases, we did adjustments. But again, we're audited just like everybody else. We want to make sure we're giving out the right stuff. So it looks great. So for this year, we do a June calculation, right? So we start to calculate it against the baseline, and then we do another one in September and another one in December. Okay, and we will try and we ask our customers, our MSPs, and our customers to just keep up on it throughout the year. It's hard to go back after a year of 12 months and try to go back and look at everything for everyone, especially if you're a mailer who's super active. But that's part of why we've been looking at some of this. We actually found some folks that had some crids that had dropped or hadn't used. We had some folks that didn't put the proper mailing statements in. We found it, we adjusted it. Guess what? They got these credits. It was a great bonus for them on that. But that's the measurement process, and we will make adjustments along the way during the entire performance period for all of these. But June, September, December is really our time when we can measure those performance credits and start to have folks take advantage of those.
Yeah, I see you, Ann, saying you had multiple crids under your application. It takes some time to set up. Yep, and we work closely with our USPS rep to get it done correctly. And yep, I hear that. And then you say yours increased. Do you mean your credits increased during the adjustment period? Just curious if that's what you mean there. So, Chris, how are the credits calculated? Let's talk about the adjustments. How does that happen?
Yeah, it's based off an average price paid, right? And we keep we have 2 basically programs going on. We've got a first class mail growth incentive, and then we've got a marketing mail growth incentive. So we don't combine them, we keep them separate. It's the average price paid, and it's after all of the other promotions or incentives or discounts are applied. So if you got pre-sort rates that you're taking advantage of, if you're taking advantage of the 6 to 8 promotions that we also put together that are out there that you can also lay on top of these credits, which I strongly encourage everyone to do. If it applies to you or there's an opportunity to apply those promotions, sign up for those as well. Take advantage of all of those incentivization programs that we are putting together. We're doing it for a number of reasons. It primarily for me, it's all about how to create growth. So if there's something that we're missing, we do change those promotions over time. We will adjust this mail growth incentive as well to help the market and create and continue creating demand. But those are put out there. So take advantage of all those promotions that you can. There is no limit to the credits that are earned. So we had no cap as to how many credits we would issue. So if we had planned on 120 million, there's really no ceiling. And it's because we are actually creating growth here. Okay, so as we create growth, those credits are being established. So, hence why we're at $500 million just for year one.
Yeah. So how does the mail owner request the credits? How does that work?
Yeah, so we've got a process, a 5-step process on that too. It's a fairly simple process unless there's a discrepancy, right? You go into the mail promotions portal, you enter your permit number, finance number. You would submit the claim. You'll request and ask that. We look at that and see if you've got enough credits, if you qualify, if you're on target. We validate it. If it's in range of our system and what they're asking for, and we agree, we pop it in there, and those credits get assigned over to that permit, and they can take advantage of them as soon as they pop in. So historically, at least lately now, it's been running about 48 hours, with the exception of those that started in January for that review. If one disagrees, though, this is an opportunity for us to have that dialogue and understand just what exactly did either side miss. And it's been a great dialogue. I'm hearing nothing but good things coming from customers to say, hey, we think we had this, and this is what it was, or we've come back and said, hey, we think this is what it might be, and we both look at it, both parties look at it, and we come up with an option that says, yep, we're settling on this. It could be subtle differences. The subtle differences meaning the customer might have thought there was X amount of pieces at whatever rate that they've used, but they didn't apply the postage discounts from the promotions. So it may have lowered someone's average cost per piece by, let's say, by a few pennies. They're not by dollars, right? It's a few pennies here and there. So, and then that usually puts everybody in range of what a credit is.
Odell, I see your question in the chat. That's a question a lot of you asked. Odell was asking how other MSPs are managing this, who's doing the work. So if you want to know more about that, Odell, would you put that in the Q&A so that others can upvote that? I would love to talk more about that and get Chris to talk about it. So Chris, briefly here, then how can and when can these postage credits be used? Tell us about how to apply and when those credits can be applied.
Sure. So if you participated this past year, you can use those credits all the way up to December 2026. All right. So you can earn all this year. All right. So if you're going to go for 2025, you can so for 2025 you can earn all this year, and they will be good for 2026. Okay. So you can earn and use for 2025 and 2026. Okay. For those who participated last year, they can, if they haven't already used them, they can use their current credits through 2025.
Got it. All right, folks. I had a lot of you asking that question. Please make sure that cleared it up for you. We also had questions about the reporting, like how can we tell, what's going on, and how do we get a look at the activity? So what kind of reports are provided for folks who are engaged in this?
Yeah, now this is something that we currently provide, and we're going to look to enhance, because there were a lot of questions tied to this past year. If you were a CFO or CEO, you were asking your folks, hey, where is this? What does this mean? How can I see it? What do I post? In your financial reports, quarterly earnings and such. Where does it lie? And tied to budget. So we have currently some dashboards that give baseline information, volume to date, the price paid to date, right? The postage credits earned and assigned to the permit and the balance remaining. We're going to enhance that for this year. So we're working on some stuff that'll come out. I think June, July is when we're looking to have some of these look a little nicer, right? It's a user experience environment of it. And then from an MSP perspective, if the end user, if the owner assigns it over to an MSP, they will have some visibility on that. But the visibility really belongs to the mail owner primarily. It would be as if I was asking you, Dave, if I could see your bank account. Yeah. I'm not sure, everyone should see my bank account, right?
We're friends, man. It's good. We're friends,
right. Maybe you want access to it, but I'm not sure. But I think it's that sort of relationship, and in many cases, the MSPs, make sure you're having good dialogue with your customers, because in some cases, customers use multiple MSPs for multiple applications. Yep, so sure. you want to kind of have communication is key in all of that.
All right, Chris Karpenko, I'm going to give you a rest for just a second. Other Chris Lean, I'm going to tap you into the conversation here.
All right.
I know that about 2/3 of the audience, as we saw in that poll, are mail service providers and agencies. Yep. The other third are the mail owners. Okay, so I want to talk specifically about some of the questions that I got to the mail owners. I'm curious from your perspective, Chris Lean, why do you think mail owners aren't taking advantage of this program? Why aren't more mail owners taking advantage?
That's a great question. I think there's two reasons for it, Dave. One is just awareness, right? Just being aware of this. It's interesting and almost sad, really. Last year, when I was out talking to a lot of different companies, including mail owners, helping them with, quarterly business reviews and things like that, see how their business is doing, I would bring up the mail growth incentive last year, and many of them had not even heard about it. And I think that was part of the reason why we saw such a rush towards the deadline of trying to get a lot of these mail owners registered for it. So we need to make sure that the industry is aware that this is an opportunity, a real opportunity for the mail owners to seriously look at their business and consider leveraging the power of mail. And you know who the best person is to talk about this? The service providers. Mail service providers, you are the ones, right? You are the Sherpas, okay? You're the ones that are leading the way here. And we need all of you to pay attention to not just the promotions, which are exciting and applicable to everybody, but you need to prepare and leverage these growth incentives. So have your eyes open. Look at who your customers are. Make sure you understand what their growth opportunities are. You're the one that not only needs to educate this market, but also to help them to register for it. You interface with the Postal Service all the time, right? You are their advocate. Please step up, stand out, get engaged, and you'll be the one that they're going to want to spend those credits with.
Yeah, I see Chuck saying it's free money, right, Chuck? I understand that there's qualifications to participate in such, but Chris, this seems like a huge opportunity for mail service providers. So what do you think is the most effective way for the mail service providers here in the room to help their clients take a next step? What does it take for them to be able to go out there and confidently start to talk about this?
Communication absolutely is key on it. You have to have the communication. Again, mail service providers, whether or not your customer is printing everything they do through you, most likely they're printing some of their mailings with you, somebody with somebody else, and so forth. Okay, and I get that. They might split it up and so forth, but we're talking about, a customer here, a mail owner, and their collective volume of either first-class mail or marketing mail. Remember, they can be in both of those programs, but you can't mix them together. Okay, they have to be separate. But again, if you're the MSP, if you're the service provider that talks to your customer first about this, explains that this is a real opportunity, helps them to start to pull together the data that they need for the CRID. And remember, Chris Karpenko was clear on this. The CRID is key. It has to be based on the CRID. I know we got MIDs and I know we got STIDs. Oh my, we've got all these things going on out there. But in this case, the CRID is key with this. So again, mail service provider, you know what a CRID is. So you need to work with your customer, start putting that together. So start with the communication, have the conversation with the customer, begin to work with them to pull together the data. Some of it you will have, some maybe is from other people, right? And then once they start to get their estimated baseline together, what they think it is, now start helping them through the registration process. Because again, you're on the front line. You know how to interface with our postal partners.
Yep. So let's do a little coaching here for Mark Chrisley. I know I'm going to put you on the spot, but he's saying, so where's the free money for the MSPs? We do all the work to educate the big mailers. We tell them how to do it. And then they're going to go work with someone else, right? They can take that wherever they go. So what would you say, Chris, lean to Mark in that situation?
Who do you think, if you bring somebody to the dance, who do you think they're going to dance with? Okay. If you are helping your customer get access to this, if you're helping your customer understand and unlock the potential of mail, that helps them to endear their business to you, right? You're going to get the retention of the business. And I want you to think about the next step with this, right? The credits. Chris Karpenko shared this amazing results of last year. $500 million, okay, folks? $500 million. That needs to be spent. Who are they going to spend it on? The ones that helped them get there. What should they spend it on? More mail that has value to it. And think about when you start using some of those postal promotions that we talked about in the last two webinars, right? You talk about opening new opportunities. The opportunity for direct mail is so significant, I should really be wearing these, right? It's incredible out there. And so help your customer understand the growth credit, start building those, and then apply those for the promotions.
Thank you, Chris. Folks, as I mentioned, 700 of you plus registered for today's event. And we looked through all of those questions, and I think there's some very interesting signals in the data that we want to share with you here. Turn your attention to the screen. We've looked at the patterns from the mail service providers, from the mail owners, and from the industry. And so if you're wondering, what are your peers thinking? How are they looking at this? How are they thinking about that question that we just asked a moment ago? Because these are all legitimate questions. No question is off limits. I told you that when you entered the room. Don't feel bad about asking your question. If you've got the question, others do as well. But here's what we're seeing in the data. I'm going to talk first about what I saw in the data for the mail owners. Then Chris Lean is going to talk a little bit more about the mail service providers. And then Jerry, I'm going to tag you in to talk a little bit about what we're seeing across the industry. Here's the observation I made about the mail owners. I'm talking about the brands doing direct mail. To me, and mail service providers, listen up here, it seemed like the largest mailers were the ones asking the most basic questions. Chris Lean, what does that tell you?
It tells me that they have they are relying on the mail service provider to take care of all of the minutia and the details on how the mail goes out. That's really what they're looking for. When I talk to mail owners, I talk to a mail service provider, the mail owners will say, well, that's what I pay XYZ company to do. I'm paying you to take care of this stuff, right?
Okay.
So they're not going to be aware of that. They're relying on the mail service provider to be able to go out and handle this. That's part of it.
I see the mid-sized companies, mid-market companies, most interested in combining promotions with the mail growth incentive. So mail owners, that's what I saw in the data from you. And then the other thing, and I want you to tell me in the chat, I want you to drop an X in the chat if this resonates with you, that internal resistance from within your own organization sometimes seems to be a bigger barrier than the qualification threshold. I was talking to Chris Karpenko about this yesterday, scratching my head as to, why do I see this in the data? Does that resonate with the mail owners here? If it does, drop an X in the chat because we want to equip you with more tools and resources to be able to have that conversation internally. So, Chris, let's go to the mail service providers now. Just briefly, what did you see in the data here, and what are some of the interesting observations?
Well, there's a couple. So first of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about a trend, and I'm seeing some of the things in the chat on this, right?
Okay.
And I'm kind of a little disappointed, I have to say, because there's a lot of mail service providers that are still fixated on the price of postage. And I get it. The price of postage changing, it's going up and so forth, okay? You're missing out on the bigger story. It's the purpose of the piece. Are you engaged with your customer and understanding what the value of the mail piece is? They're not putting mail in the system because they like to put ink on paper, although we love the Silvamo paper. They're putting mail in the system because it works. And it works exceptionally well when you make sure that it's going to somebody with a complete, correct, and current address, that you're not mailing to deceased people, right? That you're putting active messages on there. And again, even turning to those promotions, right? 3%, 4%, 6% discounts as you start to stack them. And we talked about that in last webinar. That's to get your attention, folks. The real story is the value of the mail piece and the potential that it has. So I need the mail service providers to start pivoting away from the price of postage and focus on the purpose of the piece. You're the stakeholder. You build the piece. My goodness, you bake the barcode. You're the ones that are starting the whole journey as we prime the mailbox, along with digital messages from MindFire and everything all built together. Start taking the role that you have in this and help your customers get the credits and use those promotions to be able to improve that value.
So, Chris, are you seeing that in the data, or as you're talking to folks, that the mail service providers are trying to move from the processing, the production of mail, to becoming a more strategic advisor, thinking about the purpose of the piece? Where do you think the market's at with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So BCC had a user conference. We do this every year. We're going to kind of go to it every other year in August. And I asked our attendees, our customers, I said, how many of you are charging for what I would call advanced address quality? You run the address list through the CAS certified software, you fix the addresses and you put it in the mail stream. But how many of you are going back to the customers and saying, I can remove these addresses that are not going to get delivered. I can remove deceased individuals. I can remove, pardon the pun, I can take junk out of the mail, okay? So that I'm not putting that in there when I know that those pieces are not going to perform. And a lot of you are charging extra for that. And here's the interesting point, Dave. As mail volume goes down, the value per piece increases. The value per piece increases because the response rate goes up. So if you're helping your customer and explaining to them, I'm going to go from that sleepy 3% response rate to a 5, 8, 10 or higher because I'm cleaning the list. I'm enhancing the message on the piece with a promotion. I'm using digital messages as an omni-channel play with it. There are so many ways, mail service providers, that you now can be engaged, grow the value of the mail, and start creating pricing tiers that reflect that.
All right, Jerry, I want to tag you in here. As you looked at the registration data across the industry and the supply chain that's involved, there's a lot of those folks here in the room with us. Tell us about some of the things that jumped out at you. What did you see in the data there, and what does it tell you about what's going on here in the industry?
Yeah, good question. And Chris, good lead-ins, right? Because we've got a little different perspective from the angle we're coming at this as a paper supplier. So certainly we've noticed paper merchants, envelope companies, end users, a large amount of large end users and software providers, they're all attending to learn about the incentive, back to Chris's point, to add value to their customers and help their customers take full advantage of the incentive. A lot of these folks are asking us very sophisticated questions about helping customers maximize the benefits. And we want to be here as a resource to help educate them all up and down the supply chain line. So depending on what avenue we are providing paper through, we're getting different questions, whether it's a paper merchant, an envelope company, or an envelope converter, a software provider, an end user. And we want to help the mail growth incentive program. The impact is just beyond the mailers and the mail service providers, right? It goes all the way up and down the supply chain. And to your point earlier, Dave, if one of every 3 pieces running through the mail on Uncoded Free Sheet is in Silvamo, we're heavily invested in how we collectively add value through the chain.
Yep. Folks, as we talk about these strategies to, drive mail growth and use the mail growth incentive, Jerry, I want to have you speak briefly here about this new idea, something new that Sylvamo is offering, intended to address a critical challenge that I know many of you have. How many of you are challenged with this? I want you to drop a yes in the chat, proving that direct mail has a positive ROI, that the attribution for sales, for revenue, for leads back to the direct mail is something that's typically difficult to prove to your leadership teams and to the folks that you're accountable to. How many of you have that issue? Drop a yes in the chat if that's you. I want to start to see who here agrees with that. Yes, says Jerome. Yes, Brian. Yeah, proving attribution, proving ROI for mail is challenging. So Sylvamo is announcing here today something called intelligent paper. And Jerry, I want you to talk to us a little bit about this. I think, based on what I've heard from you, it's going to transform how we measure and optimize direct mail campaigns. So describe to us what you're doing and the thought process here.
Yeah, so we're calling it through intelligent paper. Here's what we know from working with marketing leaders like yourself. So despite direct mail's effectiveness and incredible returns, right, we're often flying blind when it comes to response tracking.
Okay.
Generic QR codes, website traffic spikes, they don't really tell the full story on what's going on. So we believe you need individual level response data to justify the spend, some of what we're seeing in the chat here, and optimize campaigns. This becomes even more crucial, right, as you plan for growth in 2025.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing here, Jerry, I think resonates with a lot in the room. Please tell us if this is true, folks in the room. I want to hear in the chat. The Sylvamo Intelligent Paper Initiative, turn your attention to the screen here, folks. I want you to look at the screen here, is going to integrate tracking technology directly into your direct mail piece. This is an offer that Sylvamo is going to make here in just a moment to a few of you through using omni-channel, personalized QR codes, personalized URLs, powered by Mindfire, by my organization. So that means that when recipients engage with your mail piece, you're going to know exactly who responded. So whether you're the mail owner or the mail service provider, you're going to be able to provide attribution back to that direct mail campaign, meaning real-time visibility into performance, individual level response tracking, knowing by name exactly who's holding that piece in their hand, the ability to optimize then your spend based on that information and make the justification, make the business case for continuing to spend more in direct mail or just to even maintain that budget. So Jerry, I want you to talk about what you're planning to do here and how you want to make this accessible to, I believe it's 5 folks here that you want to make this program accessible to. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. And again, we believe in the power of direct mail, and we want to help them quantify the ROI using this intelligent paper solution. We're going to offer this partnership with some of you to help offset the cost of utilizing the technology to quantify and effectively target your market. So we're looking for 5 folks, a minimum run of 350,000 pieces. We're going to initially partner with partners to experience this technology and execute on data sharing the agreement to enable analytics measuring, right? So Don Sylvamo brands, which we've talked about a number of times. We're not going to go into a pitch on that, but effective, immediately looking to partner with folks, and we'll have some links later and things you can attach into to get participants in this, but we're looking forward to cascading this forward in a very rapid fashion.
So what I'm hearing, folks, for the first 5 companies that qualify, here's what you have the opportunity for. Not only are we talking about the 30% USPS postage credit, which was over $500 million. You heard that from Chris Karpenko. Chris Lean, you mentioned the postage promotions, another few percents there. Now, on top of that, Sylvamo is saying, hey, you can add in omnichannel to track the effectiveness of your direct mail. Certainly, you can track your digital alongside that as well, in partnership with Mindfire here to fully unlock the power of direct mail and to understand how it's doing. So here's what I want to know from you folks. Who is interested in learning more about this? If you would like to have a conversation with the Sylvamo team, Suzanne's got the poll up here on the screen. Would you like to learn more about how this works and how Sylvamo is going to subsidize this for you? So I'm going to leave this up here for 30 seconds. Please take a moment to answer the question here. If you're serious about, direct mail and achieving your growth targets, whether you're a mail owner or a mail service provider, and if you want to be at the forefront of direct mail innovation, I want you to take a moment and respond to this poll. And in a moment, we're going to get to questions here, real-time questions. Betsy's saying, I need to know what is available for nonprofits and marketing mailings. Okay, Betsy, add that into the chat there. We want to make sure we get all your questions. Suzanne, go ahead and let's shut that down. I want to see how many folks are interested in taking the next step here. All right, so there on the screen, if Suzanne is showing that, we've got 38% of you who are saying yes, please. 27% said maybe later. 35% said not interested. I'm really interested. From those of you who said not interested, why? Let us know there in the chat. That's always helpful to understand why you wouldn't want to be able to provide attribution back to the direct mail piece, why you wouldn't want to be able to prove that to your organization or to your customer. That's helpful to know as well. All right. One more word here from Rodrigo, who is the general manager, senior vice president, general manager of North America for Sylvamo. I want you to hear from him about the commitment that Sylvamo is making to this community through this webinar series and now this announcement here of Intelligent Paper. So we're going to listen to a quick message. I asked him to record this for all of you here, and then we're going to get into your questions. So please make sure that your questions are in the Q&A, and we're going to turn to that in just a moment.
As you know, we are committed to Uncoated Freesheet. We are a family of trusted paper brands with a mission to transform renewable resources into papers that people depend on for education, communication, and entertainment. So part of fulfilling our mission is partnering with the United States Postal Service because we believe direct mail is such a powerful and effective tool. When our customers win, we win. We want to ensure our customers that rely on our paper can continue to commit to direct mail despite postal increases. Sharing the Postal Service cost savings promotion and helping to educate on the mail growth incentives can mitigate mail volume decline. I can proudly say we make paper mills, and we're committed to providing the highest quality products, ensuring the power of direct mail remains a vital growth channel.
Rodrigo, thank you for that, for your leadership and commitment to direct mail. And with that, let's turn to Q&A now, folks. This is your time, as I mentioned, to be selfish. If you have a question that hasn't been answered, I want to make sure you have an opportunity to do that. Go into the chat. That's where you can converse with each other. But go to the Q&A specifically if you've got a question there. And if your question hasn't yet been answered, add it there if you don't see it listed, and press the upvote button next to the ones that you are also interested in hearing more about. The one that seems to have risen to the top, Chris Karpenko, I know we discussed this question in advance and you knew it was coming. What do you think we can expect to see in terms of postal price increase in July? What are you thinking there? How is USPS looking at that?
Yeah, so I can tell you, everything has everything has increases over time. Look at what eggs are costing today. We are going to have a price increase, a price change in the June-July time period. We did not have a January market dominant price change, which is great. Right. So when you think about it, historically, over the past couple of years, we've been going about twice a year and making these changes. We defrayed that. And part of that was talking to the industry and talking to the market about doing that from a budgetary perspective. Adjusting twice tends to send some influx in organizations. So we went with going with one. It's going to happen in June, July of this coming year. We didn't do it in January. So you got kind of a half a year run off of that, which is great. But we will be doing some price changes that are out there. We're at the same time, we're offering the mail growth incentive, a bunch of promotions. We're actually going to be doing some other promotions that I can't tell anybody yet because I'm not allowed to do it because it's just friends here, Chris.
It's okay. You can share.
It's amongst all of you. But here's the thing, between myself and my directors over here, there's a real commitment on our part, as well as a commitment from, what I would consider the 10th floor, as crazy as the world is nowadays. There's a real commitment to making mail, having mail continue to be viable, continue to have value to it. It will take some time to rewire everyone. We have many people here have grown up in this industry and have built their mindset on selling to rate. And that is a challenge, and Chris Lean had talked about that before. Bad example, me being in the media world and buying media because we do marketing and we do an omni-channel approach. So we use mail, but we use other media channels. They don't talk about rate with other media channels. Okay, so when you think about the rates that are out there, you think they change those rates all the time, and they change them a lot more than postal changes those rates. It's a challenge, so it's an accepted challenge. I think we all have that in our world, and if what you don't also see is the air cover of how much those rates increase with other media channels as well. So you've got some, I pulled it the other day, and I'm seeing really good platforms that are effective in their own way. 8, 12, I had one that was 30% increase, pretty significant in those worlds. You just don't see it in the air cover that's out there. Ours will be real, I guess is the way to say it. But if it would net out to be a lower rate than if we did a rate in January and a rate in June. Yeah. So I'd like to keep that in mind, that because we're just doing it in June, it actually nets out versus if we did 2, it would probably add up to be larger than the one going in June. So it's about value. Take advantage of these other things that are out there and where you can. And the other part about that is, and I'll just reiterate this, is our team is committed to figuring out how to help generate demand. Right? Where's the demand? Because if we don't generate demand, it's not about price, it's about demand. Where's the value? Where's the demand? And if we can create demand where businesses who have those budgets, whether they're fixed or they're growing, you've got people that have to reallocate funds. And if they're willing to reallocate funds, that's where everyone here starts to win. And that's that growth story. Because if I give 30% credit to a business and they in turn reinvest it into mail, that MSP is winning. That MSP has the opportunity to create more pieces, more ink, more paper, more postage, and all of a sudden now we've stabilized that. And it's that discussion about growth. How do we change the discussion about price to a discussion about growth? We're fully committed to it. That's my charter here. I'm making big swings. Team here did $500 million in year one with little exposure. Chris talked about it earlier. It was little exposure. Now, when I say little exposure, so many people didn't know about it. Right. And I think that's the opportunity. And I will say something. There was something in the chat that said, "Hey, I don't qualify. I don't think I will." We had a customer tell us that they signed up just because just in case. And they had a moment in their organization that said, "Oh my gosh, we have to do something," whatever that was. All right, we won't get into the particulars of it, but they had to do something, and they went to the table and said, "We've got to communicate to our customers. We have an opportunity to participate in this mail growth incentive." They had signed up. They had originally not forecasted that they would be able to take advantage of it because they didn't know what they didn't know at the time. There in September, something happens. All of a sudden, they're able to take advantage of it. So some of the things are what we planned for the year, but also if there was probably about 13% of those that participated that were about 5% of hitting their threshold and being in the positive for that. To be able to do that. So I throw that out there. It's the art of what's possible, right? Yeah. So we know from data, but we also know about what's the art of possible. So take advantage of it.
So Chris, 1,300 companies participated. I jotted that down. From your view at USPS, how many total companies do you think qualify that haven't taken advantage of the 30%?
So if I go on my data set of where I think, there's at least 5,000 that we think are in the range that we know of because they currently do some type of mail that we have some level of visibility on. So that's a known entity or known group of folks that do that. What we don't have is the other 29 million other businesses. Now, don't get me wrong. There's small businesses, small, medium, large, and all that. There's 29 million in that in the country today. Okay, I don't have visibility on someone who's not used mail. I could tell you I have visibility on what they pay for media, but they don't necessarily use mail, and that's a really key sort of insight for me. So there's about 5,000 that we kind of know could participate that kind of are already we pre-qualified, but there's 29 million others of which, if you look at the media spend, if you look at someone's media spend, there's something in there that says they could incrementally shift. We're not asking folks to shift all of their media over from one thing to another. If you do subtle shifts over into mail to create that amplified omni-channel experience, we think there's much more than the 5,000.
Yep. So if you guys got brilliant ideas here in the room, there's a lot of very smart people here. Let's solve that 29 million challenge there. There is a way that we can do that together. But I want to make sure, Chris Lean, I want you to speak briefly on, all right, there's 1,300 that participated, maybe 5,000 that are eligible. So it leaves, let's say, 4,000 that either the mail service providers aren't educating or the mail owners aren't aware. Is that how you read that?
That's exactly how I read it, David. That's exactly how I read it. And, again, I want to underscore what Chris Karpenko just said as well. The CRID is the key, folks. If the Postal Service doesn't have the CRID with the mail owner, and I know we all kind of scrambled around in the beginning with CRIDs and MIDs and things like that, and they got kind of confusing and stuff, and we weren't sure how it all was supposed to shake out. As a mail service provider, you are on that front line. You're the Sherpa. You're the one that's helping to make this happen. You need to make sure that you've got the right CRIDs that are being associated with your customer's mail. Help your customer understand what that is. We want to make sure that it's not just the 5,000 that we want to continue to educate and get in this program. It's the ones that the Postal Service, that Chris Karpenko and his team can't see. So they need our help as mail service providers to try and get those people in the game. And again, why are you helping a mail owner with something that you're not going to directly get the benefit with it? Because you're helping to grow the value of the mail piece. I also want to touch on something that Chris Karpenko said. I think it's spot on. Google doesn't charge you based on how many people are on the planet with an internet access for their search engine. They charge based on attribution. They charge based on impressions, right? That's how everybody else is doing this. If you're in direct marketing, it's based on impressions, right? So if that's a baseline, it's all based on impressions and attribution. Do you have 100 unread emails in your inbox? 500 unread emails? I bet you do. You don't have 100 or 500 pieces sitting in your mailbox, do you? Direct marketers understand that. I'm going to go out and I'm going to touch the mail piece. And when I do, it touches me back. And now it opens up a whole new experience that I cannot get with digital alone. I can turn off my email. I can turn off all kinds of digital forms. I'm not turning off the mail. Marketers understand it. They're coming back. They're leveraging it. You need to get in the game, folks. I cannot underscore that enough to the mail service providers. Please, I beg you, start having the conversation with your customer about the value, the purpose of the piece. Start helping them to get at least aware of these programs. Maybe they don't qualify this year. Maybe you can help them to qualify next year. But you got to be part of this, folks. I don't want you to be the slow zebra while the lions overtake you.
Yeah, Chris, I think I saw somebody saying, obviously we're not reading the room, folks. I think that there's two groups here, okay? There are a group of you who are probably working with smaller brands and doing less volume, and then there's a group that are doing, volumes that qualify for the program here. I just saw Keith throw in here in the chat, this is a great program. We increased over 3 million mail pieces for one client alone. Keith, we need to hear more of those stories so that we can encourage the others who are thinking about how can I apply this to my work and to the work that I'm doing. And folks, I hear Chris Karpenko saying, hey, we're open to new ideas. We're trying to figure out how to grow. So now is your opportunity, folks. Just my humble suggestion here, instead of poo-pooing the idea, why don't you offer some ideas and some suggestions around how we can help? That's what this is here for. Now, Chris Karpenko, I'm going to bring you back into the hot seat just for a moment here. And let's talk about two elephants in the room. I want to know your perspective on the information from the Postmaster General earlier this week, and then again last night with the information about what the Washington Post published there. What's your perspective on that? Again, just between friends here.
Just between friends. So yeah, there is a lot going on just in general. Right. And if for those particular two things you want to ask. So this past week, for those of you who don't know, our Postmaster General, Louis DeJoy, ended up informing the board and communicating with the board, which then communicated out publicly that we were going to start to look for a successor. This has been in the works for many years, right? So when he first came, he was charged with making some changes, some transformative changes. Delivering for America is the strategic plan that we're rolling out. We've been rolling out. It's a long-term plan. It's done a number of really good things for us. We still have some ways to go with it, but that's like any large entity. His time was really only going to be here 3 to 5. It was always that way. And for those of you who came to the National Postal Forum last year, he even said it. Hey, listen, I've got all these things going on. At some point, I'll be combining these other things together as I step away and have a successor take over for me and continue on with the strategic plan. This was always planned. So I'd ask that nobody read into that part. Now there might be other timing and other air cover that's going on out there, but this has been in the works in a plan, and he's not going away. Both he and I walked in today. We walked in, we were able to get into our offices, we were able to access our data, we're here on our webinar, the mail is being delivered today. All of these things are happening, right? We see a lot of noise that's out there. People like to take things and take whatever that might be and then apply their logic or apply their position on something. This has always been in the works. We're having really good dialogue. I just had a meeting with him yesterday on some other things with some of the rollouts and service and things like that. He is a huge proponent of pricing to incentivize to get the market back in a way that we see the curve of mail from an operational perspective change, right? So there's a real commitment there. He's here until they find a successor. So that for most of us here, that could take anywhere from 2 months to 2 years. All right, so please don't read into any of that stuff. It's not. This is not Bravo. It's not Bravo. We're not watching some crazy reality show. The second question you had related to the Washington Post article that came out yesterday. You've heard nothing from the Postal Service, right? That article came out. There's a ton of speculation going on right now. But you've heard nothing from us about any of that. The White House is I think another article talked about the White House, didn't have a comment or said that they weren't doing something. You're not seeing us retract and have a negative impact on this, on all these things. So I would ask all of you to provide a level-headed, logical approach to everything we're out delivering every day. We have endured 250 years of who knows the Depression, when we had it was a post office department in the 60s to the 70s and switched over. So don't read into, don't allow yourself to read into the fact that the Postal Service is here and it's here to stay and it's here to deliver. And folks like me are here to commit, and I'm telling you, I'm committing to doing things to help where we can create demand so the market feels they want to put money towards creating mail, whether you're an end user, to help the industry as a whole. The industry was you know why the industry was created? Because there was a market demand for it. That's why it was created. Think about it. I mean, you know, even today, you got, you know, for those of you who's an Amazon Prime member, right? You still order. How many of you received a catalog? You received a catalog, right? Sears used to do that back in the early 1900s. Now, you know, now you're getting, so there is this idea of digital and physical in there, right? And maybe it's not the same as it was, but there are different ways we can go about it and do it in a smart way, in an effective way. We're committed. So please don't read into like, oh my gosh, we're going here, we're doing this, we're doing that. We are here, regardless of if it's Louis DeJoy or John Doe or a board or some secretary, or none of that really matters to us here, right?
Okay.
The organization will survive and exist and do good things as all organizations evolve and change over time.
Okay.
And I think,
Thank you, Chris.
So I can't reiterate that enough. And we are committed to figuring out how to keep mail viable and growing. So I could go on and on, but I'll stop.
Thank you for that. Now, Chris, I want to ask you this question. Mark was saying, no, we're not poo-pooing it. We're saying we don't qualify, as I mentioned the MGI. Mark, thank you for that. I really appreciate your feedback. And then he submitted an idea, Chris, that I want to just get your kind of take us inside the room when you have the conversations around the million mark, that minimum. How do you pick that number? And is there any conversation around, hey, let's move that to 500,000 or move that to 100,000? Not asking you to make any commitments here. Just wondering, how do you look at that number and take us inside the room when you guys debate that and figure out where should that threshold be set?
It's a fantastic question, right? So if you guys, the team, if everybody here could just be a fly on the wall, or look at it through one of the cameras, maybe someday I'll leave my Zoom on inadvertently, and you can just listen in on it, right? There's a lot of passion for how do we make it work, what works. We've been doing these promotions. Promotions have always been designed for short-term options for people to test and learn and utilize and take advantage of it, right? Whether it was the catalog incentive, the tactile, QR code, informed delivery, whatever those are, those were designed for test and learn and in short-term stints. The mail growth incentive is our first step into a longer-term roadmap and strategy to reinvest and to get folks to think about mail in a very different way. And when we have these discussions, we're trying to figure out, okay, what could be the world around an incentive, right? This particular incentive is one, it's about growth. Here's what we debate. And I don't know if it's been mentioned or not, but you go with a mail growth incentive and you start with something. We've got to start with a million pieces. Get 1 million pieces and they grow. And let's say you grow by 1 million and you get up to 2 million pieces. Fantastic growth, and you're using it. So the next year, if that's your new baseline, what people would probably run into a challenge at some point in time is that this growth curve ends up starting to level out, right? And that, that we know is we're seeing it, we understand it, and we know that we need to look at other ways to help establish that, right? So a really bad example, if I knew that everybody here was going to sign an agreement that said they would give us, on aggregate, 600 million pieces a day into the system, guess what I could probably do? I'd probably not raise rates. Right? I mean, so you think about it, right? So there's so much complexity to all of this, right? So if on average, the average delivery got 3 pieces of mail, letter, flat, package, whatever that might be, that's the average for about 165 million pieces. In order for us to
say it is 3? It's 3?
About 3.
Okay.
3 pieces of something on average, right? Letter, flat, package. Jerry or Chris, pop in if you want to add in on this because it's a panel for us, right? So 3 pieces on average. If I can increase that to 5 pieces of whatever that might be, 5 pieces, letter, flat, package, our operations side, right? The COO and the CFO turn around and say, our costs go down because we have a fixed cost to go everywhere. It's a universal service, right? It's a fixed cost that we go to 165 million plus piece delivery points every day. If I could cover it with 5. Now, it sounds light, but that's not an easy task, right? 3 to 5 doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're talking this type of volume and scale, that's a little bit of investment. But that's kind of my philosophy. These are the debates, right? So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. People will agree or disagree with me on all these things, but these are the types of debates that we are having with the teams, and they get not confrontational, but they certainly, there's friction on our end because we are trying to figure out, okay, well, if that's the case, how do we push the envelope? How do we generate right? Generate market demand. Is it part of it is pricing, part of it is value, part of it's the air cover out there. Most of the time, and this is, the digital world is really good at promoting the digital media and how good it is, right? What do you usually hear about postal? You usually hear about postage rates, right? Because it's a different kind of air cover for people. Right? We've got to change that. So that part of our job on this end, I think Jerry's trying to do it too with the idea of doing a test, is how do you get case studies? How do you get testimonials? How do you change those things? Yeah. Right? How do you start to leverage things like informed delivery, which is truly a digital sort of discussion about 65 million people that can get their mail piece every day, right? Mail pieces every day, right? So there's a real sort of like play on that. Right. I mean, I had an entity the other day offer, they gave an offer to give me a certain amount of money. If they could give me a certain amount of money, would I lock their rates in for a year? Okay. And it started with a B. Okay. There was a number and it had a B to it.
And that's
right?
postage you're talking about?
Yeah, for postage, right? They were like, if I gave you this X, right? So it's that kind of discussions that we're having, whether they're right or wrong or whether we're doing it or not. We are trying to figure out what those types of things are. I mean, there's skin in the game for everybody, right? I can't give discounts just to give discounts. Yeah. But if I turned around and I told you, hey, I give you a discount if you didn't give it, if I gave it to you for a certain rate and you didn't hit that threshold, and as a penalty you owed us X amount of dollars guaranteed, would you do it? I don't know. I mean, that gets people pretty nervous because they gotta hold some skin in the game on that too. So, we are trying to figure out what to do, and certainly open to the teams here. We hear. And specifically, I'll say this to the MSP world. The MSP world is a tough world. It's a tough world. You're fighting for every day. You're fighting for budget. You're fighting for increases that come from all different areas. You're fighting for the fact that the hidden buyer, the buyer that is the one that's selling right in the PO, but there's a hidden buyer. That buyability of why use mail is there's this hidden buyer in an organization, and you don't always see it. It could be supply management that says, it's too much for us, we're not doing it. Or it could be the CEO or the CFO. That hidden buyer is hindering some of your efforts. We've got to do a better job as a group to figure out how to get those hidden buyers on board. And some of that is air cover in business publications or air cover with the financial world, or I'm using different examples, but those are the types of things, as well as figuring out what types of incentives could we do to make things happen. I have an NSA template right now. It's a negotiated service agreement for mail. I've got it. It's approved. It's approved to the board. Folks want to look at it and try and do it. I've been, I'm happy to send out the template, get people to think that if they can do that, that's an NSA. We don't historically do that for market dominant products. We've got it approved and in the wings for those that want to take advantage of it. So whether you're
tell us what that is. Can you be clear about that, Chris? What would that?
It's a negotiated service agreement, right? So in the competitive market, you've got these products, packages, Ground Advantage, Priority Mail, and such that you're able to use, and you can get discounted rates because you have a negotiated service agreement, a contract with us, right? There is the ability to do one with mail. Now, it's not easy. Be the first person to say it's not easy, but we've got one, and we've gotten one over the line with the regulator, and it's available. Now, do people want to do the work to be able to do that? It's a great question. We had someone that was ready to do it. They ended up having their business was in a financial strait, so it was a completely different reason why they didn't participate. But we've got those types of things potentially available that we are looking at, so that we can actually try to enable the marketplace to be healthy. Okay, digital's done a great job at it, and digital is good. Don't get me wrong. We do digital too, right? Digital and mail are very similar in nature, right? So it's a very direct. Okay, so it's figuring out how to shift those in ways so that we can optimize using mail. It's incremental.
Thank you, Chris. Deanna, I saw your note there. I'm very sorry to hear that, Deanna. If we can help, the community can help here. Let us try to help. Tough situation. I know a lot of folks are in, and certainly we want to be a community that rallies around and supports one another. Chris Karpenko and Chris Lean, I know that we have the National Postal Forum upcoming, and that's going to be yet another opportunity to have these kinds of conversations in person with industry and suppliers, vendors, et cetera. I'm going to ask Suzanne to bring up another poll here in just a moment. Jerry, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Silvamo is also presenting at NPF. Is that right?
That is correct. We're going to be at NPF, and for the folks chatting here, we'd love to see you there and talk to you. We're going to be at a booth 451. So please stop by and talk to us. I mean, exactly what Chris and Chris are saying. We're all collectively in this together. right? There are not winners and losers in this. We either all win together or all have trouble together. So happy to meet with people, happy to talk about other ideas and options. And similar to what Chris and Chris have said, look, for Sylvamo, we're only uncoded free sheet. We're not going anywhere. This is the business we're in. If you guys track us at all, we're a publicly traded company. We just invested a tremendous amount of money, $150 million in our mill in South Carolina. We're committed to staying in the business. So we'd love to see you at NPF.
Suzanne, if you don't mind, get the poll ready here. And Christine, I'm going to tag you in here. What can folks expect at NPF this year that you want to share with everyone? And as you're speaking, Suzanne's going to bring up the poll. We want to know if you're going to be at the National Postal Forum. So take a moment to answer that and let us know if you're going to be there. Christine, what's on tap this year?
At the Postal Forum this year, it's going to be fantastic. Largest registration in 10 years, folks. A lot of people are coming to NPF, okay? This is really, really hot this year. They want to come to the Postal Service or Postal Forum because they want to hear directly from the Postal Service. They're coming to the forum because they want to connect with their colleagues. They're coming to the forum because they want education. They're coming to the forum to have fun and to get something out of it. And you're going to get that in Nashville. I can tell you our exhibit hall is nearly full. We've only got a few more spaces left in it. And a third of the exhibitors, Dave, are first-time exhibitors for NPF this year. We are attracting a lot of new companies that want to participate in the National Postal Forum. And folks, I got to tell you, it's the same reason that I was saying before. Understanding direct mail's power is now a big deal. The days of spray and pray are over, okay? And maybe it's the price per piece that's gone up. That's part of the focus on it. Maybe it's the fact that you've got, the household diary study report, you've got ANA, you've got all different types of other sources say, hey, you know what? Direct mail really does work. That's my best ROI compared to any other single channel, right? Why would I sit there with a 0.12% response rate when I could be getting 3, 5, 10% with a really carefully crafted mail piece? So I need you to go to NPF, folks, because that's not only going to help you to build your network, it's going to help you to level up your business. That's what we're trying to do with today's webinar. That's what we're going to be doing at NPF. So please do check out NPF. Consider coming. It's in Nashville too, right? So we're going to have a lot of fun events there, including a special event on Tuesday night called Industry's Got Talent. You want to hear your colleagues actually play bands and show us their talent there. It's going to be pretty wild. First time we're ever doing something like that. So again, biggest turnout in a decade. You need to be part of it.
Suzanne, let's take a look at how many people are attending. And I know we're right at the end of our official time. I asked Chris Karpenko and the panel if they could stick around. I know some of you probably do have to leave. If you do, and if you don't want to miss any of the further conversation here, we'll stick around for a little bit longer here. Drop your best email in the chat if you do need to drop off, and we'll make sure to get you the recording in order to hear the rest of the conversation. So we have 31% saying they're going to be there, and 26% say they're still deciding, 42% not this year, and then a very small number said, what is the National Postal Forum? Well, that's good. Let's get that number up. Let's get more there. And in addition to that, I want to make sure you have access to the resource that I mentioned. I know some of you will have to leave here shortly, but Sylvamo has prepared a resource center with the other sessions that we've held over the last couple of months, as well as information around how to participate in the postage promotions. And soon we're going to be adding the information here on the mail growth incentive. So my team, please drop that in the chat. We will also send this to you in email to make sure that you have access to that resource guide. 2 more things I want you to know. As I mentioned, in our next session, we're going to do a workshop on the mail growth incentive. So today is kind of the overview of the program, and we try to address as many of the 700, 800 questions that came in as we could. The next one's going to be the workshop. So think of it as rolling up the sleeves. It's for the folks who are doing the work step by step. How do you access the mailing promotions portal, the MPP, through the BCG, lots of acronyms, through the Business Customer Gateway? How do you register? What does program registration look like? How do you measure your performance? And we're going to try to demystify all of the steps that you need to know in order to take advantage of the mail growth incentive for those of you who are interested in taking the next step with that, helping your organization or helping your customers do that. Does that sound useful to you guys? Give me a yes in the chat if that sounds useful. We will make sure that you get the registration link for that. I believe the QR code here also allows you to sign up for that now. So please take a look at that, scan that with your phone. And then one more question for you, and then we're going to go back to your questions for us. Suzanne, I want you to bring up the poll here. Folks, these events that we produce are for you. They're for the community, okay? And I want to know from all of you, Suzanne's going to bring this up here on the screen, what else could we bring to you in a future event? So take a look. There's still hundreds of you here in the room. Take a look at the poll here. What topics would be useful to you? You can check off as many as you think would be helpful regarding sustainability, regarding strategies to offset postal rate increases. For example, commingling could be one of those strategies. How to boost response rates by combining digital with direct mail. How to get those internal champions to buy in. We talked about that, and I saw that resonated with many of you. For the mail service providers, Chris Lean touched on this. How do you move from becoming a print vendor to a marketing service provider, somebody adding value. There's also obviously upcoming government changes and regulations, and how might those impact direct mail. So if that's of interest to you, check that off. We talked about this today, how the PMG transition might impact the industry, and then how AI is impacting direct mail. So which of these are of interest to you? I'm going to give you a few more seconds. Let's say another 5, 4, 3. Turn to your attention to the screen. Vote. We want to know. This is helpful. All right, Suzanne, pull that down. Let's take a look at what the community here is interested in. I'm very curious myself here. Okay, let me pull that down so these old eyes can see that here. So it looks like interesting strategies to offset postal rate increases. How many of you want to learn more about commingle? That was a question that I talked to the Silvamo team about. Let us know there in the chat. I know that comes up fairly often. And then it looks like second is how to boost response rates combining direct mail with digital. That came in second. And then it looks like we almost have a 3-way tie with the sustainability, getting internal champions to buy into direct mail, moving from a print vendor to marketing service provider. Oh, and then I have to scroll down here. There's a lot more. I take that back. AI having an impact on direct mail is the number one. Chris Karpenko, what do you think about that?
I think that's a great opportunity to have a conversation. We will be talking about generative AI at the Postal Forum.
Okay.
And we can probably have a conversation about that in an upcoming session if you want.
Interesting. So I was mistaken there. AI's impact on direct mail is number one. I just didn't scroll down far enough. That 58%. And then it looks like second is stuff around offsetting the postal rate increases. So that would be commingle and other strategies. And then in third place, if I could scroll fast enough here, it looks like understanding upcoming government regulations. All right. Thank you, Suzanne, for sharing that. That's very helpful. If there's something there that is not listed but is on your mind, drop that there in the chat. Now, I want to give an opportunity for those of you who have a few more questions here who are still with us. There's still hundreds of you here. Chris Karpenko, I'm going to throw this one to you. This was one of the upvoted questions here. USPS provided credits in January that needed to be adjusted in February, and you gave us a revised credit amount. Many clients had budgeted for the initial credit amount only to find out they had made an error. How can we be certain this won't happen again? What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
Great question. So yes, we had something in January. I think I mentioned it earlier in this session where we needed to readjust. It was gone through an audit. We specifically spoke to the end user, the brand, the customer. We've had a lot of good conversations with them about that. Part of that audit has also caused us to make some adjustments for future feeds on the data. That part is being worked on in the code, and we foresee next year at this time being in a very different place. And I say that because we'll have done the rigor and put some things through the sandbox to make sure that the numbers are the numbers. And this was it was probably in our pilot an overwhelming success because I don't think anybody here thought we'd get to $500 million in credits.
What were you expecting, Chris? Just out of curiosity.
I can tell you, I think the conservative ones were probably maybe 20% of that, maybe.
Wow.
And I think that was because of the unknown, right? Yeah. No one has ever done this before. And that is, there's nothing to say, yes, we would do it immediately, right? Or we'd get X as a result. It was because it was so new. We ended up kind of looking at that, in a different way. And we didn't want, as people mailed more, we had it built in our system where it says, okay, we built it out. So as you put more pieces in, it was based on the growth, right? So we cut into the net contribution, if we call it, of the mail pieces of the additional new mail pieces that would be created. Then that's how we offset, or we were able to provide the credit, if you will.
So that was over $5 billion additional net new pieces.
5.5 billion new pieces.
5.5 billion.
Yeah,
Okay.
about 5.6 and over $500 million in the credit as a result of that. So there was and using, the average cost per piece, I'm diving in a little bit to the weeds on this, but, for us, we believe that's super successful. If you can put 5 billion into the system, what if we could put 10 billion into the system? Or 20 billion into the system? And I think that's the key here. And at some point, from an MSP perspective, MSPs are certainly a huge component of enablement. Yeah. I would just kind of keep insisting on, that they enable the ability to enter this stuff in and do stuff because many businesses, brands don't know how to do it. And there's a bit, there are some friction points within that. So we certainly value that. I don't have the magic wand, if you will, of MSPs for the solve. But again, if the MSPs as an aggregate came to me today and said, we guarantee you X billions of pieces a year, I can plan much differently. I can completely, and if you fall short, you owe me, right? Like you got to guarantee. And I'm using this as a very loose conversation, so I want to caveat that, right? You're getting a little bit of Chris's corner now in this of the art of the possible, right? So please do not go off and start posting or telling Washington Post.
You're talking to me, right? You're speaking to me.
Please don't do this. This is a forum, right? This is a forum to have these conversations, to ideate over. What is the art of the possible? And that's just an idea, right? It's an idea. So don't say, oh my God, the guy Karpenko just said this. He's out there. Oh, he just said this is what if he does that. If we give him this, no rate cases, no rate increase next year. Right? I mean, there's some theory behind it, and there's some numbers behind it, and there's some practicality behind it, right? If someone really could do that, that'd be great. I don't know if do you have an industry representative that says, hi, I'm a holding company, loosely used holding company that represent all MSPs. They have all agreed to sign on the dotted line on this that will give you a bazillion mail pieces next year, regardless. This is their base, and they will guarantee X. I think
it's called Chris Lean and Dave Rosendahl Inc. Chris Lean, is that what it is?
But there's something along those lines, right? We know that different industries perform differently, and we've got financial industry, you've got the retail industry, you've got all the different services that use the mail growth incentives across the board, right? We even talked about the construction, with remodeling and all that, other services. But I'll give a little caveat for this year. We had a pretty heavy election year. And what did they do with election mail and ballots? But you also had political mail, and you also had mail for special interest groups and whatnot. And it spiked in our system in October, October and early November, let's say, right? But the September, October period. Why did they use it? Because it works, right? It works. They're hyper marketers in that period of time, right? Because they have very little time to do it, but it works. That's why they use the mail to be able to do that, right? It filters out of the clutter, and they do it for that purpose. They also use other media. We're not saying other media isn't good. We use it. We think it's good. We think together it plays a really strong, component for folks, right? It's a strong campaign. But I think that's where we can do a lot of good things. MSPs can help us do that. So I am open to try to figure out what we could do for MSPs that would create growth. Everything about these conversations are about growth. Nothing is about, I'm just getting you a discount just because you put up a shingle and you've got a business. It's all about growth.
I hear you. So Mark, I'm speaking to you, Mark Jeffries, and then Chris Lean, I think you want to jump in. Mark is saying, invite the mid-sized MSPs to a forum. Open to that. Let us help coordinate that if Chris Karpenko and the others here are open to that. If you agree with Mark, a couple of things. I want to know first, what do you consider a mid-sized MSP, Mark, just so we're all talking about the same thing? And who else would like to participate in a forum to talk about that, bring concerns, and bring ideas to the table? That's, I think, what we're looking for here. Chris Lean, did you want to add something there?
Just, again, I completely agree with what, Chris Karpenko is saying, of course, is that people the listeners have to understand, right? They've got universal service obligation. They need to go to these delivery points, right? It's impossible to forecast how that volume is going to look to go out to that. So they have to prepare their business, assuming that they're going out with X amount of volume and so forth with it. I'm going to continue to say that same phrase I said before. We have to find a way as an industry, and I'm talking again to mail service providers, to shift from price of postage to purpose of the piece. We've got to find a way to be able to focus more on that part of it, because there is a value in the piece. Okay, and I understand. Well, my customer's got a fixed budget, right? So they have to mail within that. It means they're going to lower the volume of their mail pieces. Then have a conversation with them. Help them to identify what pieces should go into the mail stream. Get engaged in what is your expectation of this mailing? Do you have a response rate number that you're looking for? Is there a target? Is there something that I can help you achieve? That's the conversation I'd like you to have with them, right? Mm-hmm. That really needs to be there. And who should be having that conversation, MSP, at your company? Your sales rep, your CSR, the person that there is understanding with their customer, what the objectives are for the mailing. That's the biggest ask here, is let's start changing the narrative and the conversation to focus more on the value of the piece and the purpose of the piece.
I see that others are up for this mid-size forum. So why don't you drop the word or the phrase mid-size forum in the chat if you're interested. Mark, you're kind of defining it as folks who mail millions of pieces but have few to no customers who do 1 million pieces per year or more. Okay, so Wendy, I see you're in. Tracy, I see John. Kim, hey, Kim, it's good to see you. Tori, I think if I got that right. Chris Karpenko, I want you to be selfish for a moment here now and ask the audience, is there a question that you have? We still have hundreds here in the room. Is there a question that, as you're thinking about how do we as USPS help the market, is there a question that you would like some real-time feedback on that you want to pose to the audience?
Yeah, it's something to think about. Maybe not, if you have the answer today, great. If not, let's think about this. But, there's a lot of legitimacy for mid-sized MSPs to be figuring out, what to do, how to do it. For me, what I'm trying to find out in the formula for MSPs is how do I help or enable MSPs, regardless of size, but let's use mid-market. How do I help you with growth? It's a growth story for me. I can't fix certain fixed costs for you. I got to figure out like how do I help you sustain and grow that business, right? So what are those ways to do that? And the caveat is it's not just postage, right? So I've got to figure it. So I think someone even mentioned, hey, bring back the informed delivery promotion, right? Is that a selling component for folks to use? I would argue that it probably is, right? I'm putting my lawyer hat on today for a little bit, right? But I would say the informed delivery promotion may be something we bring back. Our biggest challenge is the MSPs and the brands that did it had a difficult time putting the right CRID with the right informed delivery. And my team over here has thousands of refunds or credits that they need to do manually to fix. So we got to figure out how to do that. That's part of the reason, right? If I've got 10,000, making the number up, 10,000 refunds to manually perform because someone took advantage of an informed delivery credit and they didn't put it in the right way the first time, it's hard for me to I eat up any incentive for us to do that, right? But I'm certainly open to hearing things like, hey, informed delivery really did help me. It helped me grow my business, right?
Yep. Please let us know there in the chat. Yeah, Kristen, go ahead.
No, I'm just kind of watching everything. I guess
okay.
Yeah. And just a reminder, informed delivery is year round this year, right?
Yeah.
All year long.
Right. It's all year round.
Yeah.
Right. But do I give a bigger, right? Do I give a bigger discount, right? I mean,
it's all year long, and you can add it.
Right.
Again, you heard me say this before, MSPs, right? You're already printing pieces that qualify for a lot of these promotions. I guarantee, I've seen them. I've been in your plans. I've seen these things. Okay. So take a look at what you're doing with these pieces. You're going to find that you're already able to participate in this.
I think the other question, and this probably is a better question to ask, Dave, maybe it's other than postage rates, what could we do to help?
I see an interesting comment from Susanna on that point. Give us materials to do a direct mail program ourselves to advertise these promos, allow us to just co-brand with the USPS. Susanna, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm terrible with that. I just want to make sure I understand the idea here, and then let's see what else you have for Chris Karpenko. You're saying like create some templates, some templated mailer campaign designs that you could put your logo into, your brand identifiers, and then mail out or promote through email or other channels. Susanna, is that what you're saying? Is that how you read that, Chris Karpenko?
Yeah, I'd offer I think I got offer letter size EDDM, print lower costs. So I will tell you that we do have some things in the works for some templated options and some generative AI creative options in the works here for people. So we're going to try and take some of the friction points of creation and design to then be packaged up and sent to an MSP or sent to a printer. So that's our intent. So we're gonna start to create some of this. We're working with some really large creative entities that are well known in the industry to be able to help with that. I hope to have some announcements by National Postal Forum.
NPF, you got to be there. You got to be there. Mark is saying, if we think through some cool ideas, how should we share them with you? So, Chris Karpenko, how would you like these ideas to kind of be funneled to you? What would be the best way to do that? Yeah,
I think we're able to pull these things out of the chat. Right?
Yes,
let's pull those out. If you put it in the chat, I think it's super helpful. It helps us. This is a great opportunity for us, right? We're talking about some things that we've really done well, and we want you to participate or get the word out over it. At the same time, this group is really it's a fantastic focus group for insights of how do we help to reinvest in this industry so that we've got a growth pattern here, right?
Yep. Mark, if you're saying you want to take this offline and think and want a way to funnel that to Chris, email us here or the Silvamo folks. I'm sure you've got our contact info, and we'll gather that up for you. John, my buddy John, saying I'd love to discuss growth with current non-mailing national brands, a proven formula USPS used long ago before your time. John is an industry vet. Swiller is saying
we are doing that as well. We are doing yes. What's old is new. Okay. We are starting to think about it this way. You've got agencies that do not promote mail. Right, they go to it's a different business model, but there's opportunity there. And with the consolidation of holding companies and agencies in the industry, there's an opportunity to create dialogue, right? Yep. And to have different discussions. It truly is about having different discussions about it. When you talk about informed delivery, do we talk about it as, hey, it's an added feature, people are going to see your email, or do we talk about it in terms of media approaches? Did you know that that you actually get this value add from using your mail. If you use a mail piece and let's say it's 100,000 pieces and you have, on average about a third of the people are on informed delivery, 30,000 people get a digital impression. And the open rate for that digital impression is around 60 to 70%, which is far higher than the average open rate for traditional email in the general market area. And then you have this conversion rate of click-throughs, right? So you're starting to change from cost per piece to a digital conversation, and you're changing the narrative, which many marketers and many people, whether you're dealing with them directly or that's the hidden buyer somewhere, needs to have, because you're relating to their language.
There's still hundreds of you here. You're hanging on and I think listening for additional value. Chris Karpenko, can you go another 7 minutes or so? Is that okay?
If the audience is, yeah.
They're here.
We're here for the hot seat. We're here for the hot seat. If I just got up and walked away, everybody would panic, right? Everybody like, where'd he go? What happened to him? Oh my gosh, he's here, he's gone. And then it'd be mass, like, oh my gosh, we were just on a webinar and Karpenko disappeared and something happened. But no, we're good. So I'm teasing with everybody, but.
So I want to get to a few more of the questions that are in the chat, but I got two things. One is, Jerry, since I know you're going to have to go soon, I want to give you an opportunity to give some words to the audience and to perhaps give some encouragement to those here who are, fighting the good fight. This is not an easy industry to be in. So what would you say, Jerry, to everybody who's still here with us right now?
Yeah, thank you. And I apologize for having to run off here. The passion in the chats speaks a lot, right? So people are committed and passionate, and that's good. From passion, you can drive change and activity. The challenge is getting us all aligned that we're all trying to grow in this together, and it's not a win or lose situation. I think these forums are great. That's why we sponsor them, and we'll continue to do this. This is a great way to, as you know, we don't sell Sylvamo on here, right? We're part of the process and the package, right? And we want to try and add value to customers in many different ways. So I would just say continue to reach out to whomever you have questions about, wherever they are in the chain, and allow us to try and work together to find solutions that are sustainable for all of us, because that's really the goal, right? We're trying to win over the long term together and recognize, look, this is fraught with challenges. If this was not fraught with challenges, we wouldn't have 700 plus people on the webinar today, right? So there's a lot of opportunity for all of us if we are comfortable enough being creative and challenging each other professionally.
Thank you, Jerry. And if you got value from this, folks, give some X's and O's there in the chat so Jerry knows that the time here was useful to you. We always like that feedback. I'm going to come to you with another question, Chris Karpenko here, and I think you've touched on this, but it was a question from Brian. It got 10 votes, basically asking, with the potential changes to the Postmaster General and the news that you mentioned last night, is there any chance that these events negatively affect this incentive program? I think you touched on it, but let's hear it again. What's your response to that?
The answer is it does not. It does not. It does not impact the incentive program.
Okay.
We're running the incentive program. We're running promotions. We're looking at other ways to do this. We're heads down. We're doing what we need to do. We're committed. We're committed to our customers. We're committed to the MSPs. We're committed to the marketplace. I could say that. I will continue to say that. I think what the downside of noise like this does is it hurts the marketplace in general. Right? It creates uncertainty. People feel this level of uncertainty. They go in, they're like, oh my gosh, is it closing up or is it going away? We have to shift. We have to find something else. I would ask all of you that are out there using mail, for your campaigns, for your correspondence, as well as those that are selling to it, talk a different narrative. It's very positive. This is not a doom and gloom opportunity here. This is an opportunity. We have to overcome that cloud that people run to, that they're creating the extra drama for. We've got to change that narrative. If we don't change that narrative, we will not be successful. You will be fighting an uphill battle, because the first thing you will hear is, there was a Washington Post article the other day. Or, we heard that the PMG is leaving. There's uncertainty here. That is so far from being accurate of what we do as an organization. And everyone here, whether you own the mail as a brand or a customer, whether you're an MSP, you're in the industry in some way, form, or fashion, I don't want to say take the high road, but be positive about this. You've all been in this industry for a number of years, right? And continue to be in this industry and fight for it because you have passion for being in this industry, right? You believe in it, it works. And I would say that that's probably the biggest challenge. Every time you get a negative article, how do you overcome that? right?
Mhm.
How do you overcome and it's very easy online to be able to like start a thread and it go down a negative path and everybody jumps on top of it. When in reality is there's so much good. It's easy to destroy,
Yeah,
right? But there's so
absolutely.
much good here. And what
Absolutely.
everyone here does is awesome. So those that
Huge.
have attended, I personally want to thank for attending.
Huge. Swiller says, ignore most media. Let's wait and see what actually happens. Absolutely. Like Chris Lean says, he's walking on sunshine. My friend Andrew Henkel, Johnson and Quinn says, thank you all. It's tough to get this large of a program 100% perfect out of the gate. That's right, Andrew. But I do have to stress that the volume incentive has been very helpful for our clients. Hope to see you at MPF. Well, I'll see you there for sure, Andrew, but that's great to hear. I want to ask you a question, Chris Karpenko. Last year's incentive, does it factor into the allowable rate cap? Is that effectively then charging back the dollars that were given for MGI? And is that the plan going forward to do the same thing? Help me understand that.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know how, we have a regulator that we work with, and we have a process that we go through for rate setting and such. There's been some discussion over, how do we come up with that? And there are inputs that we put into this formula that Sharon Owens, our VP of Pricing and company, do with her team. We have always for any promotion or incentive, in this case, included those monies, that participation into creating rate models. The nuance that I would say is it's not a forecasted component. So specifically for mail growth incentive or for promotions, it is not a forecasted number. It is a baked in number that is used from actual. So that's the one component that we do use for that, but it's actual, not forecasted.
Got it. Wes, thank you, Wes, for these words. Kudos to USPS for trying something new. Chris Karpenko, to you, to the team, to the entire organization. Keep improving it. Wes, exactly right. Susanna says, yes, let's execute then. Perfect. Alex, did I pronounce that right? Thank you all for your time. I have to leave. Thank you very much, Alex, for being here. There's still over 100 of you left here in the room. If there is something burning on your mind that hasn't been answered, drop it into the chat. Go ahead and put it into the chat. I have that up here in front of me. I'm going to leave it open for a few more minutes. As you are thinking of your final question here, if there's anything left on your mind, drop it into the chat. Chris Lean, I'm going to come to you first, and then you, Chris Karpenko. Chris Lean, similar to what we did with Jerry, your closing thoughts and encouragement to the group here.
We are at a really exciting time, in my opinion. The value of mail continues to go up. The visibility of mail continues to go up. The days of spray and pray are over, as I said before. This is all about tracking. We've got attribution. The piece works. It's now our job as mail service providers to make sure that the direct marketers understand there is absolutely value in delivering a carefully crafted, highly targeted piece to the right person at the right time and using that as a foundation by priming the mailbox with digital messages to enhance the overall response rate. That in a nutshell is what we need. So it's our opportunity, folks. All the data is there. The opportunities are there. Our postal partners are incenting us to move in that direction. Let's make it happen together. And see you at MPF.
There you go. Chris Karpenko, can I register a Canadian company for the growth incentive? Yes or no?
You can. They'll have to have a permit in the States here. I mean, we do it all across the border, Niagara Falls, Buffalo, Detroit. So
There you go. Hopefully
yeah.
Thank you, Chuck, for that question. Hopefully that answered your
We
question.
We want mail.
Yeah, we want it. We want it. Bring it. Hey, folks, go to the chat, please, and give some thanks to Chris Karpenko. It's not easy, given the week that he's had and the work that he's doing, for him to spend almost 2 hours with us now and, just an immense amount of time preparing for today. Please give him some thanks there in the chat. And I want to know from you, what's something that stood out to you today? What was the takeaway that you gathered from the time here together? Take a moment, give us that feedback. Frank Lynn, hey, Frank is saying now is not the time for MSPs to keep their head in the sand. Rate structures and discounts are changing, and mailing is becoming more complicated. Now is the time to lean in. All right. Chuck, I see your question there. We'll follow up with you and see if we can get you the help there that you need. Colleen is saying, thank you, everyone. Very helpful and informative. I'm ready to go sell some print and mail. That's good. Keep the comments coming here, folks. George Platt, my friend George, is saying, good job, Chris Karpenko, in the hot seat. You're absolutely right there, George. Thank you, Chris, for that. Chris, I want to give you an opportunity, as folks are kind of dropping in the chat here for us, what stood out to them, the takeaway that they had today. Give us, and you've been very encouraging, but give us your closing words here of encouragement and what you suggest for this group based on kind of the zeitgeist of what you heard. What are your closing thoughts for the group here?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And thanks for coordinating this, right? So we really appreciate your series that you're putting through on this. A couple things that I'd say here. If you participated in the mail growth incentive, thank you for doing that. If you haven't and you can, do it. If you've got customers that could potentially, that you do or don't know, if they could qualify, talk to them about it, talk to them about the options. This is a story of growth. It's a growth for us. You have a personal commitment from me and to the industry and to the customers that are out there that we are looking at additional ways to make things easier, make things more incentivized, creating the market demand. We do this all together. It's not just a one-person show or one end of this. It is a symbiotic sort of relationship between postal, MSPs, industry, and customers that are out there working. We need to do that as a united front. Open to ideas about growth. Let's make it a very positive story for everyone, and continue that positive story. Be evangelists for that. Dave, you're an evangelist for us, and I appreciate the time that you take here with the audience. The audience was really good. Tough questions. Still here. And side note, Dave and I had this conversation last night. Do we want to do this or do we not want to do this?
Yep.
Right? Everything's allegedly, going all crazy and everything. We had this conversation. You know what we both said? Absolutely. You know why? We're both committed to it. The other stuff is noise. This is about real, tangible growth that's real. And we've got good messages to talk about, good messaging, between Chris, Jerry, everybody. But these are good things. We're all in it together. We'll continue to be there. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Chris. And folks, I dropped my email into the chat there. If there's something that wasn't answered, like I said, hundreds of questions and thousands of messages here in the chat. If there's something you still need, don't hesitate to reach out. Myself, Chris Lean, we are advocates for you, and we will get you the help that you need. Susanna is saying communication is everything in life, with your children, with your spouse, with your friends, with your colleagues, your partners, with your clients. Mail is an integral part of communication. These are active discussions, and they're imperative. As an MSP, I am leaving knowing I need to continue to be a cheerleader for communications. Wow, what a way to end on that note.
Yep.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that. So as we wrap up here, folks, Chris, to you and the team at USPS, and to all of leadership, and how many employees do we have? 6,500 or no,
640,000. Yeah, 640, give or take. It depends on the seasonality of it. But dedicated employees, throughout. I know my team specifically, who's been on today. I want to thank them for helping, get through the questions. They're tough questions. But listen, we're here. We're an infrastructure that is here. We're here to stay. We're dedicated, devoted. Don't get caught up in the noise.
Yep. Thank you, Chris, to you and your team, the entire Postal Service. I know you often face criticism, but the dedication and the commitment to our industry that you've exemplified today, deserves recognition and appreciation. So from me and from everyone else that's here and helped produce today's event, just so many people have contributed on Chris's side, Jerry and Salvamo, BCC, Mindfire, USPS, so many people have come together to make this event possible. So thank you, all of you, for spending time with us. Your time is the most precious asset you have, and the fact that you would spend it with us and this group here talking about mail means that you are committed and invested in the future of this industry. So with that, I will sign off here. Thank you, Chris Karpenko. Thank you, Chris Lean. And thank you to Salvamo and Jerry for putting on today's event. And we will see you all soon at the next event. March 21st, the day before my birthday, I think, is the workshop. And then after that, we will see you at the National Postal Forum. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again. Take care.
Bye-bye.